Hello and welcome to The Geeks Review. I'm Royce.
I'm Matt.
I'm Holly.
Hi, I'm Rob.
Today we'll be taking a look at Doctor Who Series 11 and 12 starring Jodie Whittaker as the Doctor in anticipation of the new episode coming this holiday season. Not exactly sure when, but...
I think New Year's?
Oh,
I think they're trying to pander and going back to Christmas.
No.
But anyway, a quick overview of the series for those who don't know. Doctor Who is a long-running science fiction TV show about an alien centuries old who travels through time and space, rubbing shoulders with historical figures, fighting alien enemies and just generally saving the day. Now, the Doctor has the ability to regenerate when they're fatally wounded, changing their physical appearance and allowing countless actors to play the role over the 60 so years show's been around for. Talk of a female Doctor's been around since at least the 1970s, but it's the current showrunner, Chris Chibnall, creator of Broadchurch, who cast Broadchurch's own Jodie Whittaker in the lead role. Jodie is joined by Tosin Cole and Mandip Gill as Ryan Sinclair and Yasmin Khan, as well as Bradley Walsh from The Chase UK as Graham. So I've assembled a team here of Doctor Who experts of varying levels.
Wouldn't call us experts, but
Yeah, I don't know about
fanatics,
that.
fans.
Fanatics.
Matt might be the closest thing to an expert.
So we're going to discuss these shows, take a look back, and offer our opinions on where this series is going.
Didn't Colin Baker say that he wanted there to be a female Doctor?
Tom Baker did back as
Tom
far
Baker
as
did?
the 70s, yeah.
No, I think it was Colin Baker in the 80s.
Yeah.
Tom Baker distanced himself from Doctor Who as soon as he finished. It
Yeah.
took him like 30 years to even speak its name again.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think he was definitely very keen for a female Doctor back then. But
I think
I know
Colin said that.
Colin Baker was very keen for a female Doctor. Peter Davison wasn't.
Yeah.
He left Twitter because he got cancelled for saying he didn't like...
What? Is that true?
Yeah.
Yeah. Peter Davison, the fifth Doctor, it was a shame that little boys no longer had that role model to look up to. And then people responded to him saying, hey, that's pretty stupid, like, what about girls who now have a role model to look up to? And he couldn't take that, so...
And also the countless other British male role models in cinema and TV.
Yeah.
the idea, I think he said, he later expanded upon that, was to say that the Doctor is quite, a pacifistic character, exemplifies, I guess, desirable traits, taking the path of non-violence and intelligence to sort of, solve your problems. So that was kind of like, I think he was saying that. He later expanded upon that, but it wasn't him saying, I don't think women should be the role. It was more like
To have a man being a pacifist and
Yeah.
having that be inspired.
okay.
That's okay.
That's like an interesting take, but I think
Yeah.
it sounds like he
Yeah.
came in a little bit hot there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was the wrong wording and not a great sense of timing, I don't think. But I mean, the fact that we now have a female Doctor opens up a whole bunch of doors with, obviously women being able to see themselves and young girls being able to see themselves in the Doctor. And also, just from another perspective, the LGBTQ community, to have a character go from a male to a female and have that fluidity.
I
in
haven't
what the
heard
gender
someone
could
have
be.
that take.
Really?
I haven't heard someone have that take
Really?
until now. That's bizarre that I have not heard another person say that.
Because I consider that the gender fluidity of the Doctor might open that up to a whole new audience. Like,
Yeah,
That's an interesting thought, yeah.
especially in retrospect, and I mean, we'll get into the details of the series now, but it hasn't been too well received. But I reckon, because the Peter Capaldi series was also not very well received when it was happening, in retrospect, lots of people have started to appreciate it. And so I wonder if my mind will change. It quite possibly will, and maybe I'll look back on the current series with a new fondness when it's finished.
Yeah.
Well, I guess the
yeah.
question is, what is the issue here? Because, I really like Jodie Whittaker. I really like her in basically everything I've seen her in. And I like her as a Doctor. I was excited for her as a Doctor. Over the last 3 years that Jodie Whittaker has really been around, there's only been 21 episodes. Release of the series has been incredibly staggered, and not just because of, real-world events, such as all those that have happened this year. The issue, I think, seems to lie more with the storytelling, the writing, the characterization, and less with the performances themselves. Although I do have a few observations about the performance. But yeah, going on from there, the storytelling is a change from what we've become accustomed to.
I think in terms of the characters that they're trying to present, it's a really interesting dynamic that they tried to have, having obviously a female doctor and having an older companion. Because I think that that's something that we haven't really seen a lot of and Graham is considered to be more elderly. Like, he's not very old, but he's still older than most of the companions we've seen in the new run. And we have a very young, lively female doctor.
Yeah.
And that is
I
a
think
really
that's
cool...
really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a really cool, interesting take on the
yeah.
character, and it would have been a really cool way to go had the writing actually lent itself into those things. And
Yeah.
personally, if it had have just been them.
Yes, that
Because
is
I think it was a mistake to have 3 companions.
that is one of the issues. One of the biggest issues is more companions means more stories and more details to express and discuss and explore on the show. And they really shot themselves in the foot initially by... So the series up until 2018, there was always 12 to 13 episodes. But then in Series 11, Whittaker and Chibnall's first season, they cut down to 10 episodes, but the production value went up. The new series looks fantastic.
It does.
Yeah,
it
look,
looks
it
fantastic.
looks beautiful.
And you've got to keep in mind that the cut down of the episodes is definitely not the showrunner's call. It's the people at the BBC who I would hazard a guess, and this is just my personal opinion. I don't know, obviously, what goes on in the BBC's headquarters. But from where I stand, they took a risk having a female doctor. That was always going to be a risk, and obviously the outrage from that was everyone was so divided on that topic. I think they wanted to play it safe and not put more money into more episodes, because I think they wanted the high production value, because without that, you know, if they had bad production value and then a bad doctor, if that were to happen, it'd kind of just end up being a mess.
It'd be
So they
like
probably...
Colin Baker all over again.
So they probably tried to be like, look, we're going to have less episodes, put more money into the episodes, because then we can kind of hedge all our bets on the production value and not necessarily on
Yeah.
Jodie, which
Yeah.
should have been the focus.
With the issue we were talking about of the characters, I think, and this might sound maybe a little bit defeatist, I think it's kind of a case of, like, when you have 4 main characters in a show like this, I think it's a case of, like, maybe just don't try. And I don't mean don't try to have that many characters. I like having a bigger crew, but it's like, maybe don't try to have everybody's life story going on when you have 4 main characters, because, like, trying to do that and it going nowhere is worse than just kind of not trying it. So you have, like, maybe most of the, you know, secondary characters are just comedy relief or exposition. It's starting to sound, you know, like talking about the classic series again, you know, where they would have companions to just... They're a stand-in for the audience to ask questions, you know, kind of. It's sounding a bit like that, but maybe that's better than trying to flesh everyone out and it being a mess. Like, I don't know.
Or have a smaller crew.
Or smaller crew.
Because,
Yeah.
they started, like, in the very first episode, Woman Who Fell to Earth, you have the dynamic of Ryan, who has dyspraxia, which is a physical condition that affects his coordination, and his grandmother, who basically raised him, and her new husband, Graham, played by Bradley Walsh. Graham is trying really hard to be a granddad to this, you know, 18-year-old man, pretty much. And, like, step parents and blended families everywhere know the struggle. Sometimes it's easier, sometimes it's harder. And it's a really interesting thing to talk about. And Ryan and Graham's relationship over the course of that first series is one of the best hooks. Like, it's the thing that you keep coming back to see. But
I think that's the best arc.
But it's not super well explored.
But that's the thing. I think I know why. Because as much as I love Yaz, she's not meant to be there. It seems like they just went, oh, we need a female character, but we also need a tragic death at the beginning of the series. So it can't be the grandmother, and we need them to have some kind of crux that'll get them to have a relationship. but we want to have our, and that sounds really bad, like we need to have our female character, but also that's kind of what they've made it look like. They've kind of been like, oh, we need a chick.
Well, you've all mentioned good points, and since Doctor Who came back in 2005, there was kind of a new way introduced of doing things, and that's kind of the mold that the show has followed for the last 15 years. And you have the Doctor, you have the companion. Even going from showrunners like Russell T Davies to Stephen Moffat, there was like a continued sense of continuity and consistency between them. 11 feels like he was 10, like he was 9, and 9 feels like he was 87654. Jodie, to me, feels sort of totally disconnected from it all. She feels like a completely different character. The show itself doesn't quite feel to me like Doctor Who, like we've come to know it. Robbie mentioned, the classic series, and there are actually quite a few comparisons to the classic series. Chris Chibnall's been around for, 30, 40 years, and he was, going on programs commenting, much like we are now, about the state of Doctor Who back in the 1980s. It feels like it's taken considerable inspiration from that. The Doctor and the companions getting separated, going on their own separate adventures. Episodes, usually about the halfway point, sort of have a mini cliffhanger where you would end a classic series episode. The Doctor is quite distant still, and sort of there's a real disconnect from what has come in the last few years, and that's what I find most difficult, because 13 doesn't feel like Peter Capaldi's character.
It's because she hasn't been written.
Yeah, I can't define what her character is.
Because if you look at
Even
Peter
now.
Capaldi, you can see how different he was from 11, 10, 9.
Yeah.
But they focused so heavily on his character development and his personality. He was this grumpy old man who liked to play the guitar for some reason and slowly morphed and changed, and his personality changed with the events happening around him.
The guitar thing was the midlife crisis.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
His whole
Which is
arc.
hilarious.
That's his whole arc.
It's
trying
funny
to
with
work
him,
out who
actually.
he is.
If you go back really early to his first series, you do get shades of who he later becomes. Like there's a scene where he steals a guy's mug of coffee. It's quite a mischievous thing for him to do. And at this point in time, he's the grumpy old man who's, scarred by the war he's fought for the last 800, 700 years. From the next series on, he is more like, wild hair and the checkered trousers and the guitar and just silliness and,
But he has a
smiling and grinning.
personality.
He does, yeah.
Whereas Jodie, she's a brilliant actor. She's fantastic. And, in everything else I've ever seen of her, she's just got this amazing charisma. And even in Doctor Who, she still has that charisma. It's just the personality that should have been written for her is lost.
Yeah.
I think there's really great, wonderful qualities about the character that are maybe just kind of struggling to actually fully be realized. There's stuff about her, I love the kind of really kind of she has a childlike kind of demeanor. I think that's really charming. Lean into that a little bit more. And and there's moments where sometimes when she gets angry, sometimes it's very petulant. A lot of stuff about her is and it sounds like a negative or demeaning thing. It's not. I don't mean it in that sense. It's just I think there's lots of childlike things about her, and I think, I don't know, lean into that. Lean into the fact that she looks young and acts like a child and is old. Somehow it hasn't quite translated.
And as Royce was saying, Rob, you and I have had this game that we like to play sometimes where we just take two random doctors from the series and try to reconcile that they're the same person. So, say you think of David Tennant and Paul McGann and just try to imagine they're playing the same character. Tennant and McGann's pretty easy because they're both romantic doctors, but try something a bit harder. Try Troughton and Eccleston and reconcile that they're the same guy. If you try hard enough, you can.
Yeah, there's some link there.
And it could be the sex thing. It could be that's a huge thing to try and overcome. But I can't really reconcile 13 with any of the previous Doctors, except maybe 5 and 10. But 5 for the fact that she's kind of bland and just young, and Tennant because sometimes it feels like she's doing a Tennant impression because that's what works.
Yeah.
I can also kind of see her as Troughton. And I don't know whether that
kind
makes
of get
sense for
that.
anyone. It's that jovial, kind of
Yeah.
mischievous.
Because he was very just like, oh, look, I'm just having fun. But what's going on? What's
But
going on here? Ah, but I'm just having fun.
But
you know?
Troughton's whole thing was using his
It was a mask.
Yeah, his
Yeah.
foolish thing. It was a mask for his cunning that was underneath. Whereas 13 never seems to have a plan, and when she does, it's horrible. Like with the Cybermen,
Oh, yeah.
the most recent series finale had the Cybermen in it. And the Cybermen first came in, they're obviously a very classic Doctor Who monster, but they first came back in New Who in Series 2, and there was a whole two-parter about the creation of the Cybermen and the philosophy around the Cybermen. And the way the Doctor eventually defeated them and stopped them from taking over the Earth was... He didn't want to. It was literally the only way. He tried to find another way, but he couldn't. The only way to stop them was to switch off the thing that suppressed their emotions. Because the Cybermen used to be people and they were converted, and so they lost their emotions and wanted to convert everyone else. But the thing that happened was he had to take away their emotions, replace their emotions, and they remembered who they were, and they perceived the full horror of what had happened to them, and they all had meltdowns and died, which is horrible. But it was like the Doctor was like, oh my god, what have I done? But it was the only way it could happen. Immediately at the opening of the Cyber War in 13 series, she's instructing her 3 companions to take around the emotion reactivators and just place them around the camp. Like, right, Cyber War, let's give all these people trauma, let's do it. Let's exploit their psychological damage. And it's like, whoa, what are you doing?
And we keep going back to this, but I have to say it again because it's honestly so relevant. It feels so much like that. That's so classic Who.
Kind of like
Oh my God.
consequences before. They don't matter now.
Oh my god, it's like so many situations. Like there's like specifically, if I had to say 4,
Yeah.
Tom Baker,
Very Tom Baker mood.
6, Colin Baker, they would do something like that.
Later 7.
Yes. Oh my god. Like, and it was just very like, there's this problem. Okay.
Burn it.
Like, I'm just going to deal with this. I'm just solving this. And the end goal was everything. In some situations, there was rarely kind of like, there was a time for compassion, but, not when it came to just winning, I agree, like, with your point that it's really, it's really inconsistent with the character.
One
especially
episode,
after, like,
one episode she says like, I love conspiracies, and then like 2 episodes later, I don't like conspiracies.
Yeah.
But it doesn't feel like, as a result of the previous thing, she's turned against conspiracies. It just feels like it's an inconsistent, thing.
They've made her indecisive, which I don't like, because the one thing that the Doctor will always have, no matter what the regeneration is their mind.
And I think the indecisiveness could work, but it's not intentional.
Yeah.
It's just an accidental, they haven't got everyone communicating in the writer's room, or there's like not a clear vision. I actually went back and I rewatched the first episode. And rewatching it, I was like, okay, yeah, this is a really good, solid episode. It gave me hope back when I saw it. This is great. But then I recognised, like, that's something that Ryan is still doing 19 episodes from now. That's something that 13 does constantly through Series 2. So it feels almost like the entire Series 1 and Series 2 is like fan fiction, sort of written by people who've only seen Episode 1 and only have that as a basis for who these characters are. And then taking that... I mean, you look at characters like the 12th Doctor, he grows and evolves. There's like a clear, journey he undergoes. He's a different character when he dies than when he was, born. But there's the journey there, he undergoes some stuff and he changes, and that happens for all of them.
I mean, I guess Chibnall's made it very clear that he's trying to ignore all of Russell T Davies' era.
And
And
especially
Moffat's,
Moffat.
yeah.
Especially.
He's trying to ignore all of it.
It's like...
What's been often said is Chibnall watched the classic series and loved it, and then didn't like New Who when it first came on, but worked on it because it was work and it was Doctor Who. And now he's basically writing for classic Who
yeah.
with New Who.
I was going to say, it's like, we were talking about like inconsistencies. It's so weird because going back to that sort of like comparison that like I talked about, it's like it's inconsistent, but it's consistent. It's consistent with like about like 30, 40 years ago.
Yeah.
Not consistent with like
And
what was
they've
literally
made
in this
a
last
massive-
decade.
They made a massive mistake because they've made the Doctor, specifically the Doctor, really inconsistent. But Graham is very consistent.
he's like the anchor.
He is the one who is having the same character progression
Yeah.
that Capaldi had last season.
Demons of the Punjab, he's the one who, you know, comforts Yaz when she's... I mean, they travel back to the partition of India and Pakistan, and she is obviously, you know, she's encountered her family back then, and she's kind of really conflicted about all this stuff that's going on, and Graham is the one who offers her support then. And Doctor doesn't say or do anything. Later on, Graham confesses to the Doctor, you know, I'm really worried about my cancer coming back. He's a cancer survivor. And the 13th Doctor's just like, right, well, I'm just going to pretend I didn't hear that.
Well,
And
what they were trying to do with that, I think, is like, you know, give neurodivergent people representation, like as the Doctor and stuff. But it just makes her come across as cold and uncaring, which is, you know, and they hadn't established that she was neurodivergent before this. Like, if they had a neurodivergent Doctor, well, Doctor's always been a bit neurodivergent, but, you know, that could be an interesting thing to take.
And also as well in regards to writing, it's so confusing because I rewatched Torchwood, which Chris Chibnall had a heavy hand
Yeah.
in doing. And, okay, he did the sex gas episode, but that's more down to sort of, I think, the way it was directed than anything.
That was them trying to take the essence of Jack and put it into a show. And what's more Jack than having sex with a bunch of people?
Yeah,
that was
yeah.
basically... They were like, Torchwood, Jack Harkness, lots of sex.
Yeah, it's... But so many of his other episodes are great, like the introduction of Captain John Hart is a really strong, solid episode. The finale and the flashback episode, there's so much great stuff there. Broadchurch is largely fantastic.
Yeah.
His previous Doctor Who episodes were pretty good, you know, sort of like middle of the road to good. You know, they were solid, and it's kind of like, okay, he could do good, you know, doing this other stuff. And you look at what he did with Torchwood, and then with this, it's just like, what happened?
Also, can we talk about how he just decided that Jack would come back for one episode in this season and then have absolutely no bearing on the episodes coming?
I think he's going to be in the holiday
I
special,
hope so,
but-
because
Surely.
I'm a
Surely.
big fan of John Barrowman.
Yeah.
I love him.
Yeah. Did that sort of slowly hit you? Because I remember we watched that.
I was just excited to see him.
Everyone was so excited. Even though, and like it got spoiled for us.
Yeah.
But we were still sitting there like, and even
He's coming, he's coming,
When
he's
it
coming.
happened, we were still like,
We were like, yay!
you know, and then like we had a conversation about it, kind of further down the line.
Yeah.
Like I'm not sure how long later, and you brought it up again, like just like now, and you were just like, why did they do that?
Yeah, I think
and I was like, wow.
It took me about 2 hours. I was like, oh my god, he was in the episode, and then I was like, hang on.
You were just depressed, like
and then
after.
the finale happened because he gives the Doctor information about what not to do, which he should never do. That's the number one rule of time travel. Don't do that.
They've thrown away all the time travel rules from the Russell T Davies and Stephen Moffat era of fixed points in time, don't change the future. You know, in Orphan 55, the Doctor gives this cringy lecture. The message of climate change, and climate change is real, okay? Save the planet, okay? This is all important. But that was me speaking.
Yeah,
But
yeah, it's real, but the episode was done badly. That's what we're saying.
at the end of the episode, the Doctor almost turns to the camera and says, "Don't use plastic straws." That's basically what happened. But she says, because it turns out that the wasteland they were on for the whole episode, it was Earth the whole time. The Doctor says it doesn't have to be the future, and it's like, okay, Chibnall, like in any other time travel show, that's great, but in a show that has just had 15 years of consistent time travel rules,
What are you doing?
what are you doing?
Yeah.
You just changed it all.
And like,
It's-
the thing I hated about Jack was I love Jack and his character's perfect. It's John Barrowman. He can do no wrong, really, in my eyes. I love him. But everything he said didn't matter because the Doctor did it anyway,
Yeah.
knowing that she was told to not do it. So
That's so
why
funny.
was he there?
That's so funny.
Because people, Chibnall saw and probably the BBC, saw all of the backlash against Series 11 and how it didn't feel like it was the same show. And so, notice that episode also had the Jadoon and the Chameleon Arch.
Yeah.
It was all like, remember Russell T Davies? Remember that era of the show that you loved? We love it too. Keep watching.
It reminds me a lot of the. There was a preview for Classic Who back in the day. I've only read about this. I've not seen it, but it was like a preview that played on BBC before Doctor Who started. And like the Fourth Doctor, I think it was the Fourth Doctor, steps out of TARDIS and a voice goes, "Doctor, you are going to be encountering your old foes, the Daleks, soon. However, you're not supposed to have foreknowledge of events, so I'm going to wipe your memory."
Oh my god.
It's purely there as like
Yeah.
an advertisement to get viewers to watch the show.
But that's an episode.
Yeah.
They've made the
Yeah.
foreshadowing add the
Yeah.
actual episode. Also, while we're talking about characters, and we talked about, how having the 3 companions is a little bit iffy in this season, they've had 3 companions in the TARDIS at one time before,
Yeah.
back in Tennant's run. To be fair, not for long.
Yeah,
Not
for
not
long.
very much.
And those were all characters who had
They were established characters,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
the Doctor was already established by then.
Yes.
And that's been the mistake.
Well, you think about Torchwood as well. It's a team of 5, and I think everyone's sort of got their own time in the spotlight.
Yeah.
I mean, some more than others, like Tosh sort of falls away, but Tosh still has some really solid episodes.
Tosh is
and character.
possibly my favourite character in the seasons that she's in.
So it's like what happened. Yaz is like, she's a nobody.
Oh my god, Yaz. I have
Yeah.
so many problems
Yeah.
with Yaz.
I'll just have to stop us right there. It's a very interesting conversation, but we'll have to come back to it next week. Make sure to tune in to City Park Radio, same time.
I'm Matt.
I'm Holly.
I'm Rob.
I'm Royce, and we'll see you next week. Bye for now.